everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you're here. I'm Renee John, Project Leader of Workforce Development for Valley Vision. And we have brought together a group of individuals that hopefully we can learn from this morning as we seek to have an inclusive economic recovery and growth for our region. Some housekeeping. You can direct your questions to the Q&A box or raise your hand during the question and answer time. We'll go through the agenda in just a minute, but there will be a time for Q&A. And you can feel free to send any messages or information into the chat. If you're having any technical difficulties, you can also place that in the chat. This meeting is being recorded, and we will be following up with meeting materials via email after the event. That is me. My hair looked better that day. This is our agenda, so I'll go over it briefly with you. We are going to be starting with Trish Kelly, our Managing Director, going over a little bit about the Prosperity Strategy Framework, which really frames inclusive workforce development as a key strategy to both recovery and growth for our region. And then we will have panel introductions and a panel discussion from 3 individuals representing the Workforce Board System, the Capital Area Adult Education System, and the Los Rios Community College System, which we're grateful to have them here with us today, who work with a lot of high barrier and historically marginalized populations, so that we can understand how best we can all work together in this recovery and growth strategy. There'll be a time for audience question and answer, and then Trish will come back and give us some kind of recap of our regional strategy approach and how all of this fits together. And we'll end with the call to action to all of us to stay connected and continue working, aligning our region's workforce partners to ensure that everyone participates in the recovery and growth. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Trish to give us an introduction about the Prosperity Strategy Framework.
Thank you very much, Renee, and welcome to everyone. We're so delighted to have you all here. I've been looking at the participants on the list, and we have a great cross-section of people from across the region. So Valley Vision has one of its core areas as a commitment to an inclusive workforce and economic development framework and strategy. And as part of the process, we worked for the past 2.5 years with our partners, the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, the Sac Metro Chamber, and now we're also working with Cal Asia Pacific Chamber of Commerce. So we started a few years ago with a market assessment of the region that was conducted by the Brookings Institution. And they identified us compared to other mid-market regions across the country and found some of our strengths and assets, but some of our challenges. And they did include, in particular, a gap around digital skills and preparation for the future of work, especially for our youth and our minority populations. And so that really spurred a lot of action from our workforce boards, community colleges, and system partners, including our local jurisdictions, to really focus on strategies within the framework of an overall economic prosperity strategy. We released the strategy, or we were about to in March, just as the pandemic hit. So we have pivoted to really a deep discussion on what inclusive recovery looks like. And that has a core focus around the inclusive workforce development. So the strategy for this coming year is really a strategic framework and a bridge to action for the 6-county Sacramento region. And this project strategy was supported by the Federal Economic Development Administration. And so it qualifies the region for funding from EDA and other federal agencies, which would support training facilities for one thing, especially around our industry clusters. So, and this is a 5-year plan, and it's designated as our comprehensive economic development strategy. So inclusive growth matters because we want to ensure that everybody has access to opportunity, but also in recovery, the research is just all over the place, as well as we can see it in our communities, that communities and residents that are less advantaged are falling even further behind. So we want to create a pathway to opportunity for all. And that really means that we're working on cross-sector partnerships, connecting people and place to the growth sectors in our economy. So the strategy does focus on some core industry sectors where we have competitive advantage, and we're all working as partners to develop targeted strategies. We really want to focus on a more flexible, innovative, diverse workforce that has different opportunities than in the past. And you're going to hear about some of those programs and services today, not just that, but approaches. So going forward, these are our core strategies, and it's a 5-framework strategy, 5-factor strategy, but it's to be a global leader in food, ag, and health innovation, life sciences, and future mobility. So future mobility really plays on our advantages to create a clean and sustainable future around transportation, fuels, and broader access for people to the benefits of our future economy. We're targeting infrastructure investment to support clusters and drivers, and a big part of this includes access to broadband and internet and ability to use technology, because that's really critical for our community, but also for digital skills. So there's a lot of focus in the strategy about inclusive workforce development opportunities for preparing people for the future of work. So again, we're going to hear about some of those efforts today. And within that framework, creating an environment that is the most business-friendly region in the state really means supporting all businesses, small businesses in our neighborhoods, in our corridors, not just, major employers, but really working to include employers more as partners in the pathways for the future. So,
thank you, Trish.
With that, I'll turn it back to Renee.
Thank you so much. And it's my pleasure to introduce the panel to you today, and then I will have each of them do a little introduction themselves on their role within their organization and who they serve primarily. So we have Branca Marchetta, Director of the Capital Adult Education Regional Consortium. We have Roy Kim, Deputy Director of the Sacramento Employment and Training Agency. And we have Torrance Powell, Interim Associate Vice Chancellor of Instruction for Los Rios Community College District. And so we'll start with Branca, and I'll ask you, Branca, to share a little bit about the Capital Adult Educational Regional Consortium and also the student population that you serve.
Yes, hello, thank you. CAERC has existed since 2015 as a 14-member consortium. Sacramento County Office of Education and Los Rios Community College District are two of the members that support the work of the other 12 local educational agencies in the region who receive the funding from the California Adult Education Program to offer primarily education and then also training in the 7 program areas under that overall umbrella. And they include, I will show that on the next slide, but let me talk a little bit more about our population. These are numbers from 1819. We're currently in the process of compiling the numbers from 1920. In 1819, as a region, we served around 14,000 adults. Out of that group, we have 2 out of every 3 students as women. And we also, in our intake and registration process, collect various information about barriers to employment for our population. And as you can see there at that third number, 98% of our students, the adult learners that come to our programs, experience at least one or more employment barriers. You can also see the cross-section of the ages there. 18 through 39 is the 63% of overall student population, and we also serve students, adults age of 60 plus. 58% of our learners are non-native speakers, and top languages are Spanish, Farsi, and Russian. On the next slide, we talk about program areas, and our population is primarily English language learners. We then offer programs in adult secondary education, and before that, basic basic education to lead towards high school diploma and high school equivalency. We also offer career education and workforce preparation, and we serve adults with disabilities in programs specific to them, and we also offer a little bit of pre-apprenticeship. And also the numbers that we're very proud of in 2018-19, around almost 700 learners out of our system earned their high school diplomas or equivalencies, and around 1,000 certificates, just under 1,000 vocational training certificates.
Thank you, Branka. And now I will ask Roy to introduce his role with the Sacramento Employment Training Agency and the populations that they serve.
Thank you, Renee. So my name is Roy Kim. I'm with the Sacramento Employment and Training Agency. I'm the Deputy Director for the Workforce Development Department, or SETA is the acronym I'll use for Sacramento Employment and Training Agency. SETA has two major program departments. One is the Children and Family Services, which oversees the Head Start program primarily, and the other major program department is the Workforce Department, which is under my area. So in the Workforce Department, it's a number of different federal programs, but let me just kind of summarize in general. SETA oversees a network of 14 different job centers that are scattered throughout Sacramento County. And we're also the designated lead for the Capital Region, which has, I believe it's 22 total job centers scattered throughout the 9-county Capital Region, which includes Placer, El Dorado, Alpine counties, Yuba, Sutter, Glen, and Colusa, as well as our neighbors across the river in Yolo County. And you know, all of our centers tend to be what I refer to as neighborhood or community-based. I mean, we're really invested in targeting underserved communities or hard to serve communities. You mentioned, Branka mentioned, you know, them serving 98% with one or more barriers, and we track the number of participants with significant barriers as well. I think our number is around 91%. The job centers are really a network of like over 50 different partner organizations, which do include adult education, the community college system, and many other partners. We serve about 25,000 a year. Not so long ago, during the recession, it was around 50,000. About 10% of that number is what gets enrolled into more intensive or training type services. And we do have a statutory priority services that we have to provide. The feds require statutory priority for veterans, low income, public assistance, and one additional one not on this slide, basic skills division. Here's just a few demographics, if you're interested, kind of emphasizing who our customer is in our one-stop system. Very high percentage, again, with significant barriers to employment. You can go to the next slide. And then here's again, a number of different discretionary type grants that we try and integrate within the Job Center network. And you can see the different target groups on the right side and see, you know, specific subpopulations under the general category, underserved, disadvantaged, hard to serve, or whatever term you're familiar with. But this kind of gives you a sense of what the Job Center network is and who our customer is.
Thank you, Roy. And Torrance, I'll have you at this point introduce yourself and your role within Los Rios and the population Los Rios serves.
Thank you, Renee. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Torrance Powell. I currently serve as the Interim Associate Vice Chancellor of Instruction and Economic Workforce Development for the Los Rios Community College District. Los Rios, our service area is essentially the greater Sacramento area. We have our 13 locations, which include our 4 campuses, American River College, Cosumnes River College, Folsom Lake College, and Sacramento City College, as well as the aligned centers that are connected to those specific colleges. very broad service area, as I mentioned, being servicing, California's capital city in the region. We are the second largest district in the state, second only to Los Angeles Community College District, with over 2,400 service area miles within the area. And that reaches about 75,000 students annually, a little less this year because we did take a little bit of a hit with declining enrollments this year, but still around 75,000 students. And those are some of our demographics. As you can see, the community college system in California and within Los Rios specifically is an extremely diverse system. We are an open access institution, and so we receive students that have very broad, very different goals with respect to what their objectives are. Folks that are coming specifically for us with the goal of transferring to a community college or rather to a CSU or a UC or somewhere out of state, all the way to students who are really just interested in life skills or personal enrichment. And so with that very broad mission, obviously that leads to a very diverse and broad student population with respect to what their backgrounds are, where they come from, their socioeconomic status. As you can see, we do have a significant number of students who are on the lower end of the SES spectrum. We'll be speaking to some of the things that we do for those students to ensure their success later in the presentation, but we do have a very broad number of students who are coming to us with some specific financial need. Our students tend towards, generally speaking, more of the quote unquote traditional student age population of 18 to 24-year-olds, but you should note that we do have, almost half of our students are outside of that traditional age of 18 to 24 or so, just a little under half. So again, speaks to some of the diversity of the students that we serve. And of course, with respect to race and ethnicity, just over, maybe that's about 63% or so of our students are students of color. And so again, speaks to the diversity of our system. And next slide, please. And I put this in here just to really highlight the impact of the community college system in general, and specifically Los Rios to the Sacramento region on the local economy. I think it's important for us to really understand the significant impact that the Los Rios Community College District has on our local economy with respect to the return on investment, so to speak, of what we do for students and what we do for the region in terms of promoting economic growth, really helping students to achieve their career objectives, helping the local economy to really rise by virtue of providing, a very skilled workforce for the region.
Thank you so much, Torrance. The first question that I have for the panel today, and we'll start with you, Branka. Given who you serve, how are you addressing equitable access issues in your education offerings?
So in order to talk about how we're addressing it now, I need to go back a little bit into the history of adult education and the very fact that the very nature of our profession, adult education, has served diverse and underserved populations since the first adult ed program was established in San Francisco at St. Mary Cathedral back in 1856, 165 plus years ago, and it was at the time sponsored by San Francisco Board of Education. And what happened was, after the gold rush subsided, many people from all over the world decided to stay, and they needed to improve their literacy and numeracy for the new jobs of that era. So that is, fast forward 160 years, that is still happening within adult ed system, and of course within the larger context of California. And at that time, the subjects that were taught were elementary level academic subjects and vocational subjects such as drafting and bookkeeping. We are a part of public education that is not compulsory. So what that means is we say that our learners vote with their feet. So we are the educational program that has developed to understand that if there is not sufficient quality or our programming does not meet their needs, our learners stop attending. So we need to be always aware of it and meet their needs. This is why we understand the importance of good customer service, and we continuously seek input from the adult community members who entrust us with their valuable time. Our biggest population, as I mentioned earlier, is comprised of English language learners, both the group that are the immigrants who have been in the country for a while, and also this the group of the newly arrived immigrants. And currently in our region, as most of us know, we serve this large population of special immigrant visa holders from Afghanistan, and all of our systems are serving this population. We also, as a second, we also serve them with other community-based organizations whose specific role is to work with this group. We are also a partner to Department of Human Assistance to prepare CalWORK's eligible clients for entry-level employment, assist employed clients receiving subsidies or supportive services to advance toward higher employment and self-sufficiency. And we also help divert CalWORK's eligible clients into short-term education and training programs. Our populations also include adults with disabilities, as I mentioned earlier, and we serve them in partnerships with Department of Developmental Services. Also, adult education offer programs in local correctional facilities, as well as in 30+ prisons run by the California Department of Correctional Rehabilitation. And there we offer programs in adult basic and secondary education. And within our region and consortium, we have 2 members who have programs in our local county jails. We are also a sibling to the Workforce Development System under WIOA. That is a federal law, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that has been around for quite a while. SETA is our Title I sibling, and we're Title II sibling, serving the populations, the varied populations and underserved. We also, as a system in our region, we have 2 adult schools that have had contracts with SETA as comprehensive AJCCs, and then also a school district that works in collaboration with a community-based organization and also serves as a co-located AJCC to serve these populations and bring more equity to our programming.
Thank you, Branka. It sounds like partnerships are a key part of how you address the equity issues with all the different organizations you talked about partnering with to connect with special populations and ensure their success.
And whenever possible, actual physical co-location, as we have seen in some of the previous pilots that we run as a region.
Thank you so much. And Roy, I will send the same question to you, given who you serve. How are you addressing equitable access issues in your education and training offerings?
Yeah, so I mean, we can talk a lot about a lot of stuff here, but I'll just add, let me just add to kind of piggyback on what Branka said. We talked before about being really invested in underserved neighborhoods and communities throughout Sacramento and the region. And, SETA is very intentional when SETA is first a funder of services, I often say, and second, a direct provider of services. So out of the 14 job centers that are here in Sacramento County, for example, 10 of them are subcontracted, 2 are actually hosted by SETA and have SETA staff there, and a couple others are hosted by partner organizations like the Employment Development Department or the County of Sacramento. So having said that, though, all 14 are really targeting what I characterize as vulnerable communities, and in our request for proposals, where we the way we release our funding, you can really see that where we really evaluate the effectiveness of proposals in targeting those underserved neighborhoods and communities. And so we heavily partner with the community-based organizations and the adult education institutions throughout the county. And the other thing I would just mention is alignment, of course, is critical, because what the workforce system or the Title I system, as Branka referred to it, we're able to provide a lot of the wraparound coaching, the additional supports needed so that customers who have maybe lower skill levels than others can competitively compete with people with higher skill levels if they have the right coaching, the tutoring, and the additional supports, including financial supports outside the classroom. Then they're more successful to be able to compete in the classroom. And I think that that's one of the real benefits if you want to connect with underserved communities. More recently, due to COVID, what we've been doing is we've been actually purchasing for our customers laptop computers and computing devices, which allow them to participate effectively in virtual classroom environments as well. And so that's something that we'll probably look at doing on a longer term basis. Who knows how long COVID lasts, but those are a few things I'd just add to what Bronco already mentioned.
Thanks so much, Roy. And Torrance, I'll send the same question over to you. How are you working to ensure equitable access for the populations you're serving?
Sure. So we have a lot of overlap collectively, CAERC and SETA, with respect to the student populations that we serve. Oftentimes it's the same student, right? Because we do partner very well with these two organizations. So our populations, as I mentioned before, are extremely diverse. We have the same broad populations of students that are coming to us with some students with disabilities with certain learning restrictions. We have English language learners as well, first-time students who could be directly in the UC or the CSU system, but who elect to come to us for various reasons. Students who, again, are on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. And so with all of these students, in order for us to really address and ensure their success, we have to embrace fully all of the components of that individual's identity and ensure that we're providing as many services realistically as we can to help them be successful. Because oftentimes it is, the circumstances beyond the classroom or things outside of the classroom that could limit or hinder a student's success. And so to that end, we do provide a number of wraparound support services to support students as well. Things like food insecurity, having access and partnering with our local food banks to ensure that students, who are food insecure have resources. Having special programs for special populations, our TRIO programs, for example, or MESA programs that are really designed to help students who are first-time students who don't have much experience and background, maybe the first-generation student, first person in their family to go to college, to ensure they're successful. We also have dream centers for our undocumented students as well, students who, otherwise maybe feel outside of the normal student experience or classroom and may feel a little uncomfortable being on campus, ensuring that they do have physical spaces and resources to help them continue on to their dream. The California community college system in general is very supportive of students that are underserved by virtue of having the California Promise Grant, right? So all tuition being free for the students. And then we do the best that we can as a local district to supplement additional costs. So we do actually have the digital resources that we lend to students as well if they don't have computers or if they need assistance with broadband internet. We have resources to help those students. But I think the biggest thing that we're doing collectively as a district to address issues around ensuring diverse students have good outcomes is we're really examining the outcomes of our students very, using our data to really look hard at what we're doing well and what we're not doing well. And I think one of the most explicit examples of that is our Guided Pathways initiative. That is an initiative that all 4 of our colleges have taken on to essentially streamline the pathways of students. We're finding that students were having difficulty in navigating their pathway and determining the appropriate courses to take. Students weren't taking enough units to graduate on time. And so our efforts on the Guided Pathways initiative has essentially been, to ensure that students have a very clearly defined pathway. They know what courses to take in what semester, that we're offering those courses in the appropriate number of sections so students can graduate on time. And we're providing the support and wraparound services to encourage the students to go full time, to take as many units as they can and to get out into their career objective. And yeah, I think I'll stop there, but yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Second question I have for you is, where do you see areas of opportunity to improve access and success for underserved populations? And in order to switch it up, I'm going to start with Torrance first this time.
Thanks, Renee. Yeah, you know, one of the areas that's really, I think, pertinent to us right now, just given, you know, where we are as a state and as a country with COVID, that has really come to the forefront within the past few months, is really addressing the gap in terms of digital equity. And I think, you know, Roy spoke to this a little bit in his earlier response, just in terms of, you know, ensuring that our population are actually, you know, proficient in the digital space and have access to the materials that they need to be successful. A few months ago, we went remote, right? So we shut down our campus locations. We moved the vast majority, almost all of our courses from on-site and on ground to online, with the, you know, the exception of some very small number of programs that are still meeting physically on ground. But in doing that, you know, our greatest concern from an equity perspective was just, you know, do our students even have access to broadband internet and to computers? And, you know, a lot of them don't. And so I think working with our local providers for broadband internet with Comcast and AT&T, you know, to ensure that our students had access to affordable broadband, and students wouldn't have to drive into our parking lots and, you know, pull up a laptop and, you know, jump onto the Wi-Fi spots, that they would have actually access at their home, and ensuring that we can distribute, you know, computers for students that don't have, that may be doing their assignments on their phone or mobile device, that we can, you know, order sufficient number of Chromebooks or books that we can distribute through a lending program. Those have been things that we've been attempting to do to ensure that we're addressing that digital divide. But there's also the, you know, digital equity or digital divide with respect to just students' familiarity with working in that space and their comfort. And so we've been, you know, working to address that, you know, that comfort level and proficiency in an online space, because, you know, without doing these efforts, essentially we're derailing a student's potential, you know, for a full year, because we're extending these remote operations, you know, beyond this semester. We would be essentially shutting those students out from completing their goal. And so that's really one that jumps out at me now, in terms of opportunities for us to continue to improve. I think we can always improve our relationships with our workforce providers. That's something we always strive to do, to stay, really keep our finger on the pulse on what the developing and emerging industries are and the needs are for the region. So we're responsive, and our programs lead to employment outcomes and transfer opportunities beyond just our community college. And then I think the last piece that I'll say is, you know, really ensuring that we're working towards improving the outcomes within the classroom. And by that, I mean encouraging, you know, our faculty and our staff to really take a critical eye at the data and at the outcomes in terms of student achievement. You know, how well our students are performing in the classroom, things that we can maybe switch up, new innovations that we can introduce within the actual delivery of instruction to ensure that our students are being, you know, taught appropriately and they're being successful and moving on to their next path.
Thank you so much. I'm going to direct that question over to you now, Roy. Where do you see areas of opportunity to improve access and success for underserved populations?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things on what Torrance said, and I definitely agree with everything Torrance shared. I think we can all do a better job of, and everyone, I mean, not just the people on this panel, but I mean the entire system, workforce, education, and others, of being more intentional about how you're investing resources in underserved communities, really targeting those resources where they're needed the most. And I think that should be something that you know, is kind of overseeing everything involved when you're talking about system-wide workforce and economic development. The other thing I think, you know, I look at some really like promising, cool examples and expanding those. Like, for example, we have a couple of job centers, the Greater Sacramento Urban League and the La Familia Counseling Center operate two of our job centers, and both of them have partnerships with a community college system where they're really applying principles of human-centered design and meeting the customers where they're at. So what I mean by that is, so the Urban League, for example, they're offering in Del Paso Heights community health care worker training in partnership with a community college system, where now it's accessible to residents in a high need community, and they're also getting the tutoring and the coaching and the wraparound supports to really be successful. And so those types of partnerships, I mean, really partnering with a CBO, I think if you really want to connect with different communities, I mean, that should be high up on the list of strategies. But there's some examples, I think, out there and doing more things like that, where we're trying to align ourselves and partner to really, and one of the overarching goals is so we're able to better target and address that equity in that community. And so those are my comments.
Thanks so much, Roy. I'll direct the question to you now, Branka. What opportunities do you see to improve access and success for underserved populations?
Thank you. I echo what Torrance and Roy said, specifically in the area of access to technology and internet connectivity for our learners. The providers within the CAERC system are K-12 adult education programs, and very frequently they are not included in COVID-19 relief funds for technology that are the priority is for K-12 students. So that is one aspect of improvement, one area of improvement that we would love to be able to solve, yet we don't necessarily have the resources to do so, to provide more technology for our learners. So we have to be very careful and intentional about how we invest our resources, as Roy said. And what we had to do was to choose to provide technology to those who we identify as those students who are ready to be intensive in their learning and use those tools to the fullest. And sometimes that is at the expense of other populations. So we would love to be able to resolve that, but at this point we cannot. And also another aspect that maybe we didn't talk about is with our English language learner population and recent immigrants, being able to provide information for them and experiences, not only by us as system providers and experts in what we do, but also by by those who are their community members who come from the same cultural background. That's something that we would like to see more of, and I'm very excited to share something that we're working on with ARC, American River College. They have an outreach group made up of immigrant students who are willing to come to K-12 adult schools and talk to those more recently arrived about their experiences within the systems and how to navigate the systems and overall living in the United States. So more of those experiences and sharing by those who share the culture and the language.
Thank you, Branka. And the next question I have for the panel, and I'll start with Roy on this one. What challenges do you have as a system provider, and what would help improve outcomes for vulnerable populations from your perspective?
Oh, that's a good question. So, of course, right now, COVID is a challenge for everybody, but setting that aside, one of the things that before COVID, there was a relatively low unemployment rate. And one of the challenges I foresee is, what happens in a low unemployment rate environment, then the customers that we serve, the more disadvantaged, underserved groups, they gives them more of a competitive advantage, as employers are, for lack of a better term, kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, and they're more willing to invest, private resources into partnerships to help upgrade workers or upskill workers. And I think so, both now with probably 400,000, UI or pandemic unemployment combined claims filed since mid-March in Sacramento County, that's both a challenge currently as well as an ongoing challenge. It makes it more difficult. It's even more challenging for people who were disconnected before to connect to to jobs and the workplace. And so, that's probably going to be a challenge. That is a challenge now. It's going to continue to be a challenge as long as the unemployment rate is higher than, like above 6%. The other thing I would just mention is, we're of course government regulated. We run a bunch of government regulated programs, and so, in order to have that flexibility to do other things, it really is very, very important for us to align and try and partner with other organizations. Some of us are really good at a specific area, for example, like workforce boards, good at providing job readiness, work preparation activities, those types of things. Community colleges are really good at providing technical skills instruction in certificated programs or degree programs, for example, and adult education kind of in between. So, those are a couple things I would share.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bronca, I'm going to ask you the question now. What challenges do you see as a system provider, and what would help to improve outcomes for the vulnerable populations you serve?
Of course, COVID, yes, pandemic, but also overall and in a larger picture, some of our traditional barriers to success for underserved populations have been childcare, lack of childcare. That is something that comes up all the time. And also lack of transportation or transportation overall, a bus stop being moved a couple of blocks down, affecting the programs and access, right? So those are the ones that have been with us for quite a while, these challenges. Also, many of our adult learners in basic and secondary education programs need a longer period of time to earn their credits or accomplish their goals, their academic goals, because they have work and family responsibilities to compete for that time. So that because we are so much aware of that, within our system established an outcome even in between 9th and 10th grade secondary education and 11th and 12th, because with our population that could be at times a huge success to accomplish that in that level of academic understanding and knowledge. And we also in our system very often have unidentified learning disabilities with our learners, and we don't necessarily have the resources to identify them and to support them. And finally, we know within all of our systems, we all agree that we want to provide more case management style support for our learners, clients, community members, all of them, all one person really shared amongst all our systems. And then within this overall concept of warm handoff. However, all of our systems, within our systems, we are already at full capacity when it comes to tasks and responsibility that we have within the systems. So looking for more opportunities and further solutions to this, serving that one person from one system to another is still a challenge. And we're also, when it comes to comparing data, having our individual systems, we're still waiting for a good solution from the state to be able to seamlessly integrate our systems and compare our data and our information without the issue of personally identifiable information. So I'm personally very hopeful about the new California Cradle to Career Data System Initiative.
Thank you so much. Torrance, I'll ask you the same questions. What challenges do you have as a system provider, and what do you think would help vulnerable populations?
Sure. So COVID, of course, and then with COVID would come just the budget, the current budget instability and questions. We're an extremely lean system in general, the community college system, especially when compared with our other public educational institutions. So we really feel the impact of recessions and budget reductions and cuts, quite, very, very viscerally, right? So I'd say that is kind of a persistent, thing that we navigate and challenge that we navigate that's exacerbated in a COVID situation. But I'd say that being an organization that does span that broad breadth of career education or vocational education and traditional transfer pathways, ensuring that we stay current and we stay current with our physical plant, our equipment, our training, our preparation, to the changing dynamics of an evolving workforce is, a persistent challenge. But I'd say that, if I'm being honest, I think probably the biggest challenge that we as a district and as a system are negotiating is really, we're in a pivot mode with respect to what we do, right? Like for a long time, we were assessed and judged based purely upon access. Ensuring that students had access to our system, that we had appropriate classes and enrollments. And we're really pivoting as a system towards being, more outcomes focused, not just, do you have students in your classrooms, but what are they doing, right? Where are they going? How successful are they? And I think that when we talk about our diverse student populations, our disproportionately impacted students, our most vulnerable student populations, those are important questions to ask because historically, they have always underperformed, right? And I'll put that in air quotes because I think some of the underperformance is quite frankly, the system's lack of emphasis on their success. And so, us really taking a hard, honest look at what our outcomes are and being more data-driven in terms of, addressing deficiencies within our own performance metrics is something that we are struggling with. And it's been operationalized in a number of ways by guided pathways, by a piece of legislation called Assembly Bill 705, which has essentially reduced the number of pre-college, below college courses that we're placing students in. But I think within that opportunity, or within that change, is a lot of opportunity as well in terms of something that we could be doing a little better. And I'm always glad to see Branka and CAERC on a call because I think establishing better working relationships with CAERC to really develop clear and streamlined pathways for students that are starting their educational journey several levels below college level, and ensuring that we have a seamless transition between students that are coming to CAERC and then who have a desire to pursue and continue education into community college and beyond is really an opportunity that I'm looking forward to working more closely with CAERC and Branka on exploring.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give some key points here that I've gathered so far, and then ask you one last question with kind of a lightning round to answer. What I've heard emphasized so far are partnerships from all of you are critical to reaching and supporting vulnerable populations. And I heard co-location from Branka, but also neighborhood-based and reaching specific cultural groups and meeting people where they're at as a common theme. Wraparound supports and the different wraparound supports that are needed for the populations, but that it's essential to have both, not just a training and education program, but the wraparound supports to help the person be successful. They need to be married together. And the access to technology and internet connectivity is essential. And I appreciate your continued deference to each other as you're speaking about the alignment. It just speaks to the alignment that's necessary as each of you are deferring to each other. One last question from me, and then we have a couple of questions from the panel that will also provide. What are opportunities to partner with employers? If you could, I know this is tough, but in 60 seconds, let us know about some opportunities that employers can partner with your organizations or how best to do that. And Branka, I'll start with you.
I would actually defer to Roy to talk about the Manufacturing Skills Center at Charles A. Jones, which is a very exciting initiative going on right now. Also, adult education has a history of providing workplace-based employment. So if an employer has a larger group of ELL learners, adult schools could arrange for an instructor to go to the workplace and provide that instruction, or now with the new technologies developing, offer that instruction remotely. So I'm going to stop there.
Okay, perfect. And then Roy, since Branka alluded to, we'll let you go now.
Yeah, thank you. So SETA and the other workforce boards in the region, we're always looking to partner with employers, and we have what we refer to as employer service or business services staff that help are there to help employers with their hiring recruitments, with screenings. We can do customized recruitment events or job fairs, as well as provide subsidized employment or on-the-job training where we reimburse a portion of the wages in some cases. One shameless plug, I have to say, the region's invested in an online training portal, and it's available if you go to right now to sacramentoworks.org. There's a very prominent portal there. Anyone in Sacramento County today, any resident can sign up at no cost, and very soon, probably not tomorrow, but very soon, next week or two, any resident in the entire region, the 9-county capital region, can do the same thing. So it's a resource there. The reason I mention it here is not just a resource for job seekers, it's a resource for businesses as well. If they have employees that are interested in upskilling, or if they want to utilize it as part of their onboarding program. So that's why I mention it. Branka mentioned the manufacturing center at Lemon Hill, also at where we have a job center. It's a good example of where it's a public-private partnership. You have the Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative, which is an association representing a group of local manufacturers that is really invested in that project. They're investing their resources. The workforce system is investing its resources. The adult education system is investing its resource, and I'm sure there are other partners that I haven't mentioned. And so, that's a good example of what's possible when you come together, both private industry as well as the different public sector partners that are part of the workforce and education system.
Thanks so much. And Torrance, what are your thoughts on how employers can partner with community college system?
So I'm going to follow Roy's example and give kind of a shameless plug because I do see several of my Los Rios colleagues on this call. So I'm going to give you all a little shout out here. But one really big way that we really need workforce partners is engagement on our advisory committees. So every career education program has an advisory committee where they're required to connect and stay integrated with our local workforce partners to ensure that our programs are really meeting the needs of that particular industry. And that's a component that is really essential to make sure that we are delivering the appropriate quality of education, and we're focusing and emphasizing things that we should be within a given career education platform. I'll say that work experience and internships, similar to what SETA and what CAERC have kind of talked out in terms of providing students opportunities for on-the-job experiences. We do have work experience offices where students can receive college credit to actually work in your industry. So, dual win, that they're getting college credit and helping themselves graduate, and they're also picking up great experience, and you're getting a quality employee and a student that could turn into a permanent employee upon their completion of their program. So, making sure that we're integrated and connected with the work experience offices and maintaining those strong connections with our local industry are two ways that, we can really partner a little better.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to defer to Jesse Flores now from the Valley Vision team. He's going to call out some questions that have been submitted during the panel discussion.
Thanks, Renee. Yeah, we have a few questions. Some of them are geared towards individual panelists. So we'll start with the more broad question, which is from Kim Harrell. The question is, I guess Branka may have already touched on this. It's regarding adult learners. The question is, can any of the panelists speak to the barriers adult learners say they are facing and evidence-based practices that are removing the barriers to their educational and career goals?
Anyone want to start?
So I would just add what we already talked about, the fact whenever we can combine our services to serve that person, because that person may be a client in one system and a learner in another system. And whenever we can co-locate our services and have those wraparound services for them, that's how we remove barriers.
And if I could just add to that, one of the successful things that we've done with some of the subpopulations, specifically English language learners, people with disabilities, is we've created a navigator model, and the state's been generous enough to invest in that from time to time. And so I think we, in working in partnership with the adult ed system and others, have invested in basically what referred to as navigators. And the workforce system and education system, it's a pretty complex system. And we're insiders, but I don't even know if we understand it completely. There's a lot of things we don't know. So, there's lots of different funding silos and rules and regulations and different oversight agencies. And so because it is kind of a patchwork quilt, so to speak, having a navigator for a customer who has some real challenges is really critical to helping them essentially be able to access, I can get these resources here, I can get these services over here, I can get this education or training over here, and helping them put that together. Having someone with that information and knowledge is really critical for them to be able to improve their success rate.
And you're speaking of navigators specifically to like English language learner populations or people with disabilities. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, the concept's applicable to others as well. And essentially the job centers are essentially a broader based example of a navigational tool where you have staff who work there that are familiar with a number of different services or resources that exist as part of the workforce system and can help customers navigate that.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any additional comments or we go to the next question.
I'll just add something really quickly, and this will be, Kim is going to say I'm sounding like a broken record. Sorry, Kim, because I know you've heard me say this multiple times, but in looking at our data in terms of adult students, what we found is that most adult students within our district were night students, right? They were coming after work, part-time, because they had full-time jobs or other responsibilities, family, whatnot. We were finding a decline in our enrollments in evening sections. And because we weren't really capturing data very well on online enrollments until a year ago, when we actually started, gathering quality data on what our online sections were, we found a proportional increase in students who were electing to take courses online. And so what that essentially told us, we led to conclude that the majority of our students who used to come at night were electing to come and take the online classes, right? Kind of makes sense, right? It's a little easier for their schedule. But our online sections and enrollments were not increasing proportionate to the demand until about a year ago. And so, using, to Kim's question about data-driven really outcomes, that's one that I'm pretty proud of, the fact that we are now really utilizing our data with respect to student modality demand for our professional students, our older students, our adult students, and then being better at meeting what their demand is and their needs are in terms of access.
Thank you so much. Jesse, do we have another question?
Yeah, we have a question specifically for Roy from Rick Larkey. And the question is, do you have any idea how many need workforce services versus how many are provided workforce services?
Yeah, so good question, Rick. I mean, the answer, I suppose, is somewhat subjective depending on your perspective. But what I can tell you is this, that there's an overwhelming demand for services that exceeds the supply of services. So, you saw in one of the previous slides, we had 25,000 coming in the door. Only 10% of those actually get to a level of what I would call where we're providing some intensive level of service. And so if we could increase that rate, it would be great. But there's a bunch of people out there that probably need need services, and when I say workforce, I really mean workforce and education and related services, but or could benefit from them. You know, some people may not even realize they need them, I suppose, but I could probably give you a rough estimate, not right now, but I could probably back into a number, at least a ballpark number.
Thank you. We'll take one more question. Jesse, do we have another question?
Yeah, we have a question from Dean Peckham, and it's for Torrance. Recognizing that COVID is still here, many of LRCC programs are CTE programs that require labs. How is or will LRCC support these students and build equity and success for the students?
Wow, softball question, huh? Yeah. You know, I'll say we'll do it, and we have been doing it very creatively and very differently, right? There's unfortunately no one size fits all for access to these labs, right? I mean, it's a question of you know, safety first, right? Wanting to ensure that we're not putting our students in a position where they can, you know, they're gonna be at risk for contracting COVID. And, you know, a close second to that is ensuring that they can actually continue on to their pathway and it's not disrupted. And I think what we found is that we've gotten very creative in the past few months. There are some disciplines where 6 months ago, if you had asked a faculty member or instructor to, you know, really transition to this modality on online, they would say there's no way you can do it. And, you know, some of these disciplines have actually found ways to continue to offer lab services through, you know, mail-in labs or, you know, just creative at homes or tutorial videos and things of that nature where they can replicate it. You know, we've looked to some outside providers, to, you know, leaders in the field across the country who've been doing remote labs very well. I'm thinking of an example where our bio labs have adopted some you know, additional remote biolab options, and we're looking at ways to improve that. And then I think I saw Angela's, you know, chat pop up. There are some areas where we just can't do it, right? Where we just cannot really replicate an on-ground experience in a remote environment. And for those particular sections and courses, we've had to defer them, and we've had to get creative with how we're sequencing the courses so that it's less disruptive to students, that if they do have other courses that they can take to actually, you know, complete their degree or their certificate, that we're prioritizing those courses first, and we're pushing those impossible to convert, you know, courses online later into their sequence, so it's as least disruptive as it possibly can be. So there really is no one size fits all. It's been extremely challenging, but I'm very proud of the work that our faculty, our staff, that our deans have been doing to really serve students in this insecure, you know, very disruptive type experience, because it has been very interesting to say the least.
Thank you. I'm going to hand it back to Trish at this point to kind of talk about the full conversation that we've had and how it filters back into the regional strategy approach and the prosperity strategy. I want to thank our panelists for the rich conversation that we've had so far, and have Trish wrap it into the regional strategy for us now.
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you, everybody, our partners. Really, you're doing such incredible and important work. And I hope that our listeners today understand the breadth and the scope of the services and the work that's going on to help prepare all of our residents for the economy and for their pathways. And so I think we've heard too about the challenges and the barriers to success. And I think that it's really critical that we embed all of these approaches in our workforce strategies. So I do want to note that even though, of course, we are all gravely impacted by the pandemic, there are still areas of the economy that are growing. We have continuing skills gaps, especially in our middle skills, career technical jobs. So one of the things that we're trying to do is ongoing research, very market driven, to understand where the opportunities are and how to meet the skills gaps. And so Torrance mentioned about being involved in the regional advisory meetings. Valley Vision is working with the community colleges and our workforce system partners to convene industry sector advisory meetings in the spring and the fall. We encourage you all to participate. And these are our clusters where we've identified that we have job growth opportunities. And then piggybacking on that, we also have some specific sector strategies that align with these convenings that are based on the strategy, which include the California Mobility Center development, the Aggie Square development, and our food and ag system. So even though they'll be place-based, they're really envisioned to occur throughout the region, especially in terms of developing supply chains. And there's a very intentional effort to include partners across the region. And I want to note that manufacturing is included as an opportunity and a goal in every sector. So what Roy mentioned about some of the initiatives, Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative, the work with Adult Ed, with Charles A. Jones, there are investments happening, including through the city, the CAERC funding. And aligned with that, we also have needs in our construction sector. We have a lot of projects that are going forth, and we still have huge housing demand. So we have a lot of opportunities for growth. We are trying continually to generate information that tells us what those opportunities are so that the colleges can invest their strong workforce funding program. The city of Sacramento and others have invested their CARES dollars into workforce, which has been a really critical infusion. We want to keep building on those. Another area that you'll hear about if you can get on tomorrow, where we've been doing work at Valley Vision with Burning Glass to really understand the impacts of COVID on the workforce and how we can find where you can connect people to job opportunities with looking at the current skills they have and quick ways to get people some adjacent skills to meet those demands. And this builds on work that we did through the workforce boards looking at the impact of automation on jobs. So what we've seen is an acceleration of all these trends. And we are working with employers to understand their real-time demands. Another area that is very embedded in the strategy is the digital skills issue. Torrance and others mentioned that the digital equity is the 21st century civil rights issue. So we really need to make sure that everybody has equal access to technology and the internet and digital skills opportunities. So Valley Vision is partnering with Los Rios, Sac State, the city, the library, and many other partners, a lot of our CBOs, to manage the Sacramento Coalition for Digital Inclusion. And we hope to broaden that across the region, but it really addresses a lot of the needs for technology access, broadband infrastructure access, and skills and digital literacy. So those are some of the key areas that we see in the strategy going forward. And one question that came up from Rick was, Larky, was any plans to adjust the strategy for the effects of COVID on the economy and the nature of work? So I think all of these things that we're doing continue to make the strategy a living plan, and it will be updated on an ongoing basis. And we really look forward to working with all of our education and workforce system partners, the CBOs that help work with people in the communities, our institutions that are driving major initiatives like SMUD and UC Davis. I noticed there are several economic development and city officials, and so on the call, so the webinar, so we're really excited to work with you on spreading the opportunities across the region. So we encourage you to please be engaged with us, to help us engage with our employers, and we are committed through the strategy to connect with our state and federal partners, especially to bring resources into the community and support these initiatives and our partners. So thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Trish. And I noticed Jesse put in the chat the link to the webinar tomorrow that we're doing in combination with the City of Sacramento. This is the information Trish was referring to from research that was contracted with Burning Glass Technologies through the City of Sacramento CARES funding to identify skill adjacent occupations for jobs in high layoff categories. And then just a shout out that this builds off of a jobs at automation risk report that was funded by the Capital Regions 4 workforce boards. and was completed in, I believe, February or March of this year. So even though that was pre-COVID, it looked at jobs that were at high risk for automation. And when COVID hit, we saw that those jobs had the highest amount of layoffs. So we're now looking at recovery from those jobs and how to build people into more resilient occupations and what kind of skills are employers looking for now. So Burning Glass Technologies brings in data from job postings, current job postings. So that's really the most up-to-date information we can get about how employers are pivoting and what they're hiring for. We encourage you to be a part of that webinar. We also, if you're not currently getting Valley Vision's workforce newsletter, if you put your information into the chat box, we'll make sure that you get connected to that. And in this workforce newsletter, we do highlight upcoming advisories like Torrance referred to, as well as Trish. We do have a strong workforce advisory coming up on December 10th for the behavioral health sector. And we encourage anyone who is interested in these specific advisories or have subject matter expertise to attend. We also have information that we share in the newsletter, emerging trends, research-based information, and additional data to help you all do the job that you're doing and help it to make sure that we're aligned as a system so that we can be aware of what each part of the system is doing and increase the ability to transition customers or students, whatever we call them, seamlessly from one part of the system to another to ensure their success. We really encourage you to get connected and stay connected. Vantage Point is Valley Vision's overall communication piece. And if you sign up for the workforce newsletter, you'll also receive that. And we want to also encourage you or put out a call to action to connect with our panelists or within your neighborhoods. So we have these 3 panelists here and we're grateful for their contribution, and there are strategic endeavors that can be taken to align systems, and but there are also connections that can happen in your neighborhoods. So if you're working in a specific part of the capital region and there's an adult education facility in your area or a community college in your area or a job center in your area that you can connect with, that will help make those seamless transitions that are neighborhood based, that are specific to particular vulnerable populations that make up the different pocket areas of the capital region. So we encourage you to make an introduction, either I guess probably virtually right now, but at some point we'll actually be able to walk into each other's buildings again. And I don't want to underemphasize what Bronca said earlier about how effective co-location can be of services, especially when you're talking about vulnerable populations that are transportation challenged with other barriers. So we encourage you to get connected and stay connected and continue to do the good work that you're doing. We hope you've found value in this webinar today. I want to thank our panelists for their contribution. And I also want to thank the Valley Vision team who worked behind the scenes on this, particularly Emma Kofed and Jesse Flores. And we hope to see you on another webinar or advisory meeting in the near future. Thanks so much.